So welcome guys to this section, and in this section we're going to build a newsreader app. So in this app we're going to display all the news from all across the world with lots of categories. For example, here we have a tab bar with all the categories in it, so general, science, sports, technology, business, entertainment, health, and everything. And we also have a filter for filtering a desired country news. So this is for now a default is US, and then I can also filter some news here. For example, I'll just filter out, let me just see, so I'll just filter out maybe India. There you go, I have Indian news here. Now I can click on the category, automatically will change. You can click on technology, there you go, I have technology, Indian news. And also the cool feature of this app is we can read the news. So when I click on this, you're going to implement Flutter TTS, so we're going to implement text to speech functionality, and when I click on this play button, the news will be played.
WhatsApp, the popular
So yeah, I'll just increase the volume of this.
Features and improvements to make the platform more functional and secure for its users. The corporation is now imposing a new restriction on message.
So I can click on the stop button also. So yeah, I hope you guys heard it. So I can also click on this again.
Are you looking for a free Windows 10 or Windows 11 screen?
There you go. We can also implement text to speech, and yeah, we can also click on this view button. When we click on this button, then we will be displayed with the whole news. So this was just a headline, so we're gonna just show some headline, and if the user is interested in the whole news, you can click on the view button, and there you go, we have the full news here. Perfect. So if I go back, let me just show you the API. So the API we're going to use is the news API. It's a really popular API for getting the news. So here we can click on documentation. We just have to get an API key, and it's free to use for educational purposes. There you go. The documentation is also pretty straightforward, so I just have to log in to see the documentation, but it's pretty simple. We'll get all the news from this API. So yeah, the state management we're going to use here in this app is going to be block and rx dot. So we use that state, right? So let's also use something else. We're going to use block and rx dot for implementing the state for it. And yeah, I'm just excited to build this project with you guys. Let me just see you in the coding tutorials. Alright, so I've created a new Flutter project named newsreader, and first of all, let's get some packages. So let's go to pubspec.yaml, and there first of all we're going to get the block package for implementing the block pattern, and I don't think we'll use it because we're going to actually concentrate on reactive programming. So I'm going to actually use also this package named rx dot. So and then we also have the http package for making the request to our news API. Then I'm going to use the Google Fonts package for configuring my fonts. Then I'm going to use the Flutter TTS package. So with this package we're going to actually implement the text to speech functionality, and then we have WebView Flutter for implementing the WebView. So when the user clicks on the news, you can see the entire news in their website, and also we have the Intel package for configuring the date. And for using this package, so for using this Flutter TTS package, make sure you set your min SDK version to 21. So let's go to Android folder, there go to the app folder, and there go to the build.gradle file. In that file, make sure your min SDK version is 21, because this package actually only works when you have a min SDK version of 21, because the default min SDK version is actually 16. So make sure you change that, and then you can just run your application. Then you'll have the Flutter default app here. So I'm going to just clear out everything from a material app, and I'll just create a home. So I'll just clear this, and let's actually disable the debug banner. So I'm going to say debug show check mode banner is actually false, and let's also give it in home. So the home of this is going to be a new screen. And then let's actually close this material app and also close the whole widget. And this should actually do the job. And I think I didn't close it. Yeah, I also have to close the widget like this. Okay, there you go, I closed it. And let's actually create this new screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a new folder named screens. So because I want to have a clean structure of my files, I'm going to also delete this file. I don't need generated plugin. This is for actually Flutter web, I guess. I don't need this, so I'm going to just delete that. And after deleting it, in the screens folder, I'm going to create a new screen named new screen dot. I'm going to import Flutter, and I'm going to have a stateless widget because I'm not going to use state. I'm not going to use set state because, you know, I'm going to use the block pattern. So I'm going to use the rx dot file. I'm going to use the rx dot package and the block package. So I'm going to say class is news screen, and then let's go to main.dart and let's actually import the new screen. There you go, perfect. Let's actually save everything, and we should have a blank container because here we're returning a container, and there you go, we have a blank container. Let's actually return a scaffold so that we can give an app bar. I'll say return scaffold. Let's save everything, and we should have a white background automatically. And let's actually also give an app bar. So app bar is going to be the app bar widget. It's going to have a title, so the title is going to be a text widget which actually says just newsreader, indicating that this is a newsreader app. Let's actually also implement the styling. So style is going to be, again, I'm going to create a separate function named text style so that I can just call it whenever I want. In the lib folder, I'm going to create a new file named utils.dart. And in the utils.dart, I'm going to actually create a function named text style. So the text style function actually returns a text style. So I'm going to say text style. And let's actually create the function text style. And it's going to take a font size. So I say double size. It's going to take as optional parameters a color and also a font weight. And the problem is I didn't import Flutter, so that's why I'm having these warnings. Let's actually import Flutter material.dart. There you go, I have imported Flutter, and let's actually here return Google Fonts dot whichever font you want. So I'm gonna again use the Montserrat font. So I'm gonna say Google Fonts dot Montserrat. There you go, perfect. And in the Montserrat function, let's actually pass the parameter. So font size is going to be just my size parameter there, and the color is going to be the color for parameter, and the font weight is going to be the FW parameter. Okay, perfect. Let's actually take this text style function and just call it here for it style, and let's actually import this function because this is in another file. And let's actually give some font size, color, and a font weight. So the font size is going to be 25 pixels, and the color I'm going to just give black color, and the font weight is going to be font weight.w700. should be actually good. Now let's actually save everything and see if we have a app bar which actually says newsreader. Okay, there you go, I have app bar newsreader, and it's actually, this is too bold. Maybe let's say W500. Okay, this should be good. Let's actually give some other background color for the app bar. So the app bar, I'll say background color for the app bar is going to be a yellow color. So I'm going to say colors.yellow. And later on in the project, we're going to actually implement a drop down here at the right side, but we actually implement it later on because we don't need this now. Here for the body, I'm going to give a single child scroll view because my whole app is actually kind of scrollable, because I also want some responsiveness. Single child scroll view. And for the single child scroll view, you can pass in a container which actually is in the center, but I'm going to directly use a column because I'm going to have children under each other. So I'm going to say child column. And for the children, we're going to pass two children. So first of all, the first child is going to be just spacing. So a spacer, so I'm going to use a sized box widget for 20 pixels. So I'm going to have 20 pixels of spacing from the top. And after that, we're going to actually implement a single child scroll view, because here we're going to have a scrollable tab bar which we can actually select the categories from. So I'm going to create a single child scroll view which is actually going to be scrollable horizontally. So single child scroll view, and let's actually pass in the scroll direction. So the scroll direction is going to be horizontal because I want to scroll from left to right. And let's actually implement the child. So child is going to be a row of multiple widgets. So I'm going to say child row is children, but of course I don't want to write each category here, for example, I think I have 9 categories or something like that, and of course I don't want to write them individually. So that is why I'm going to actually create a list of categories. But to get the categories, let's actually see which categories we have. So the API we're going to use is this news API, because it's actually just perfect. You're going to have a free API key, but you can just here go to top headlines. So we're going to actually say top headlines, and for the top headlines, there you go, categories. We have multiple categories: business, entertainment, general, health, science, sports, and technology. So let's actually create a list of categories in the utils.dart file, and we can just use the .map so that we can dynamically render out the widgets instead of writing each widget individually. So I'm going to create a list of strings which are going to be my categories, and let's actually just write down our, I think it was 9 categories. I'm not sure, I think let's actually just start writing it. So first of all, it's gonna be the general. So we have a general category, we have a science category, we have a sports category, we have a technology category, so technology category, and we also have, I guess, the business category, and then we also have the health category, and at last I guess we have also the entertainment category. So just write down entertainment, general, science, sports, technology, business, and entertainment. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this categories list and call it .map so that I can dynamically map those widgets to the row. So I can just say categories .map, and this is actually just going to iterate through the list and render out the widgets. And of course we have to call it .toList whenever we call .map, and now we can just return any widget we want. So the widget I'm going to actually render is actually just going to be a text widget, because it's going to be a text widget with the category name, and depending on which category is selected, we're going to have a black color or a gray color. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to return a text widget, and here let's actually just call this category. Instead of just calling it E, let's actually call it category. And for the text widget, we're going to pass in the category, because so it's going to actually iterate through the categories list. So I can just say text category, and for the style I can just use my text style function, and in a text style function I can just pass in the font size. So the font size I'll just pass in 23, and the color for now I'll just pass in colors.gray, but later on, depending on which item is selected, we will just render it out in a black color. So font weight, I'm going to just use the non-bold font weight, so font weight.w600. Okay, so let's actually just save everything, and we should have a single child scroll view with the multiple text widgets. But I think we have an error, because this is actually not rendering it out. Yes, I have error. Oh, I don't know, but I always have this HTML package automatically imported, and we don't need that package. And there you go, general, science, sports, technology, and so on. As you can see, we have all the categories name in a single child scroll view, but of course we want to have a better UI, right? So I'm going to wrap this text widget into a padding so that I can give some padding. So I'm going to say edge insist only, because I only want to give from the left side. So edge insist only left, so from the left side give 15 pixels of padding. Now I'll have some spacing between those widgets. There you go, general, science, sports, technology, and so on. So I have some spacing between those widgets. And now what I want to do is I want to actually create the news widgets. So down here I'm going to have each news dynamically rendered it out. For now I'll just hardcode the UI, and later on we'll implement the actual API data. So after creating the header for the categories, let's actually implement the news widget. So the news widget we're going to have in a list view. So after this whole single child scroll view, let's actually give some spacing. I'm going to use the size box widget for the spacing. I'm going to give 20 pixels of size box height, and after this I'm going to have a list view, and of course I want everything in a dynamic way. So I'm going to use the list view.builder, which depending on the item count is going to just build the widgets, because I don't actually know how many news I'll get. It depends on the API. And the item builder is going to be context and an index. So it's also going to take some item counts. So for now, just for now, I'm going to give 5 item counts. So I have 5 items. And the other thing we're going to fix is the scrollability, because first of all, already I have a single chart scroll view and this is also scrollable. So Flutter gets confused and we'll get a warning, or actually we'll get an error, a no sized error or something like that. So to avoid that error, we actually have to give some scroll physics for a single chart scroll view and a non-scrollable physics for a list view builder. So let's pass in scroll physics here, and for a list view builder we have to say shrink wrap is true, and the physics is going to be never scrollable scroll physics, because we have to do this as this is scrollable, this is also scrollable. So Flutter gets confused and we have to implement non-scrollable physics here, and we have to pass in the physics for this single chart scroll view. And in the item builder, let's actually return a widget. So I'm going to say return a news headline widget, and let's actually create this widget somewhere else. So I'm going to create again a new folder with all the widgets. I'm going to say widgets, and let's create a new file named news headline widget.dart. Let's import Flutter here. Let's create a stateless widget, because of course I won't have any state for this. This is actually just the UI. And news headline widget, let's actually import this file so that we can see the live updates. No, sorry for that, I should have actually imported this like this. Okay, this should be good. Let's save everything, and we will have a blank container because I'm just returning a container and nothing actually happens. So let's go to news headline widget, and instead of saying just return a container, actually let's give some width for the whole container. So the width for the whole container is going to be, just take the whole width. So I'm going to say media query.offContext.size.width, and let's actually also give some padding. So padding, I want to say edge insets.only. From the left side, give 10 pixels of padding. From the right side, give 5 pixels of padding, and from the bottom, let's actually just say 10 pixels of padding. And let's give the child for the container. So child for the container is actually just going to be a card, because I want to give some elevation, or else I wouldn't have used the card. I can just directly say a row, because but now I'm just having a card for some cool elevation. So I'm going to say elevation for this is going to be 5 pixels. I don't know if it's pixels. I think it's just, the elevation is just the value. So I'm going to say 5 of value, and a child of the whole card is going to be a row, because I'm going to have 2 widgets actually next to each other. So at the left side, I'll have an image, and at the right side, we'll have the information. For example, the title, the description, the author name, the date, and so on. So child is row, and children are going to be 2 widgets. So the first widget is going to be an image widget, which we're going to actually get from the news. So image, I'm going to just say network image, because actually we're getting the image from the network. So I'm going to say network image, and we have to pass in a URL. So let's actually search for a URL in Google. So I'm going to just open up my Google. So I'm going to just say news icon, or just like news, I don't know, I'll just search for news, and we should have some images. Let's just actually just take this image. Okay, I'm gonna just take any random good image. Do you know what, let's actually just take this BBC News image. Okay, there you go, this is my image. I'm gonna just take this image and actually just paste it here in the network image, and let's actually provide some width and heights for the whole image. So the width is gonna be, take 30% of the whole container's width, because other 70% I want to give for the actual information. So 30% for the image, and the other 70% for just providing the data overall. So image, I'm going to say width is just media query dot of context dot size dot width. Do you know what? Let's actually get 33%. So I'm going to say point into 0.33 for 33%. So I'm going to just saying, so what I'm doing is I'm just saying take the whole width and multiply it by 0.33. So in this way it's actually just going to provide us with 33% of the whole width, and the image is actually the network image. And let's actually save everything and we should see an image. Okay, maybe we have an error. Yes, we have an error because it's invalid image data, so I have a false. So this is not a good image. Let's actually take another image. I'm sorry guys, but maybe this image. I just want the image URL. Okay, this should be actually perfect. Let's pass it over here. Let's save everything and we should actually see our image now. There you go, breaking news. Okay, perfect. So after providing the width, and let's actually also provide the height of the whole image. So the height of my whole container is going to be 150 pixels approximately. So I'm going to just say 140 pixels of height for the whole image. And the size is actually okay. And let's also fill in the whole image. So I'm going to give a box fit for the image widget. So fit, just say box fit dot fill. So just fill the target box by the aspect ratio. And there you go, breaking news. So it filled it out. And after providing the image, at the right side let's provide the actual information data. So after this image I'm going to say sized box of width. So I'm going to say 10 pixels of spacing in the row. And now I'm going to provide a column because I'm going to have again children beneath each other. The column, and I have multiple children. So here for children I'm going to first of all have a text widget with the title. So text is going to be the title. Maybe let's just say lorem ipsum, some random things. I don't know the title, right? So I'll say style, a text style function. So I'll say style text style, and let's actually provide the font size. So font size I'll just use 16 pixels, and the color is gonna be just the black color. And the font weight I'm gonna make it quite bold but not exactly bold, so I'm gonna just say W600. Let's save everything and we should have our text widget. There you go, lorem ipsum. And this is so small because actually for the news API data we're gonna have a big URL. So here in the news API data, the title is going to be actually big. That's why I gave a less font size. So don't worry if this actually looks pretty small, but the actual titles are going to be really big. And after this text widget I'm going to provide the author and the date. So I'm going to again have a sized box because I want some spacing between this text widget and the other row. So height I'm going to say 3 pixels. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have again a row. I'm going to have 2 widgets next to each other. So the first widget is going to be the author. So I'm going to say text author. So author, let's just say John Smith. And let's provide a style. So style is going to be the text style function. It takes in 14 pixels of font size, and the color is going to be colors.gray. And the boldness I'm going to just say font weight.bold. And after this author widget, so next to that I'm going to have the date. So I'm going to say text, the date, let's actually say 9th 5/21. Let's again pass in the style. So style is going to be a text style function again, because again that's why I use a text style function. So see, I have to write less amount of code instead of again and again saying Google Fonts Montserrat and so on. So that's why I like this function. And yeah, in a text style function the size is going to be again just 14 pixels, and the color, let's actually provide again the gray color. Pretty much a simple, like pretty much the same way as the author text widget. And the boldness, let's say font weight.bold. Let's save everything and we should see our row with the author and the whole date. Okay, perfect. But again, there's a problem. The author name and the date are actually next to each other, so I want some spacing. What I'm going to do is here in this row, I'm going to say main axis alignment is space between, so I'm going to have some space between these widgets. Okay, it's not working. Maybe the problem actually just lies for the whole column. So in this column, as you see here, I have lorem ipsum John Smith and the date, but they're not cross aligned perfectly. So for the cross axis alignment, I'm going to say cross axis alignment dot start, and let's actually see everything, and they should be aligned at the beginning. There you go, they're aligned at the start. Again, I don't have any spacing between these widgets, so I think it actually is the problem with some expanded widgets. So let's actually just see, and let's actually just go on coding and see if we have any solutions for that. Actually, it should work, but I'm just seeing if I have any errors, if I did something wrong. So okay, I gave main axis alignment and I also gave a column. Okay, let's actually just fix it later on. Let's actually just continue coding. So after this row, I'm gonna have again some sized box. So sized box is gonna be height 6, and let's provide the actual icon. So I'm gonna have a play icon, I'm gonna have a stop icon, and I'm gonna have a view button which the user can just press. So if he presses on the play button, we should actually implement the text to speech. If we press on the stop button, we have to stop the text to speech, and if we presses on the view button, you can see the whole views, you can see the whole news on the website, like on the official website. And let's actually implement the row. So I'm gonna have again element next to each other. So I'm gonna say children. So I'm gonna have 3 children. So first child is gonna be an icon. So icons dot play arrow. I'm gonna just use a play arrow sharp. So icons dot play arrow sharp. So I just want this widget, and let's actually also implement the size. So the size of the whole icon is going to be 43 pixels, and the color, let's just use the yellow color because we have a yellow white theme for the whole app. And after this icon, let's also render out another icon. So after this icon, I'm going to render out the stop icon. So icons dot stop. Let's save everything, and we should have 2 icons next to each other. There you go, a play button and a stop button, but the stop button is actually yellow. Let's actually make it black, and also I'm gonna have more height, so I'll just say 8 pixels maybe. Okay, there you go, perfect. So after the title, the author, the date name, the play buttons, at last I want to have a view button. So after this widget, I'm gonna have a view button. So I'll just gonna use the text button widget. Text button on pressed will just do nothing, so whenever the user presses on this, we'll just implement it later on. And the child of this whole thing is gonna be a text widget, because again I just have one text for the view button. So the view button, I'm gonna just view, and style, I'm gonna use the text style widget, and the color is going to be colors.black, and the boldness, I'll just say font weight .w600. Let's give some commas, and let's align everything perfectly. So I have a text button. Let's also give some background color for the text button. So to give a background color, we have to say style, and the style is going to be text button dot style from. Let's give a background color. So background color is going to be a yellow color. Colors.yellow. Let's save everything, and we should have there you go, view button, perfect. Let's also provide some width and height. So I'm gonna wrap this into a container. So width 70 pixels, let's say height is 30 pixels, and see if we have a button. There you go. Okay, the text is actually just mixed in with yellow color, so maybe let's give more height. So 32 pixels of height should be good. Okay, this is actually okay. This is okay. I mean, this is not perfect, but I'm actually satisfied with this. And after this whole row, let's provide a size box. So I want some spacing after this also, so I'm going to say height 5, and I pretty much think that we're actually finished with the UI. But again, I have to actually figure out the alignments. So first of all, I want this view button at the right side, I want these icons at the left side. So how to do that? So I'm going to wrap these icons into a separate row. So I'm going to wrap these both icons in a row itself. So in a row we have another row with these widgets, and after providing a separate row for them, let's actually now align the whole inner row, so the outer row I mean. So main axis alignment, I'll say main axis alignment dot space between. Let's save everything. Then the yellow button, like the view button, should be at the right side now, but still it's not at the right side. Maybe there is some problem with the alignments, I don't know. Actually nothing is actually aligning perfectly. So for this row, I'll just give a cross-axis alignment dot start. Okay, they are aligned at the start, but again I don't have any alignments at the main axis alignment. I'm not sure what the error is, so maybe I'll just wrap some properties into an expanded widget. So I'll just wrap this column into an expanded, so that it just takes the necessary width and height which is actually provided. So whenever we have a big, like whenever we have a there you go, we have a spacing. I don't know how I fixed it. Like I just implemented this expanded because whenever the text actually becomes really big, then it actually just regrows at the downer size. For example, if the text is too big, I won't have any text error now because it's going to automatically re-render itself on the next row, I mean on the next column. And yes, okay, we have the alignments now. Again, they are actually at the right side. This is okay, but I actually want to fix it. So I actually want to have some spacing from the right side, so I want to have some padding from the right side. So I'll just wrap this whole row here into padding. So edge insets dot only from the right side, I'm going to provide 10 pixels. Now I should have some spacing from the right side for the, there you go, for the date button, for the date text. And I also want to have some spacing for the view button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap also this padding, this row into padding. So this big row, where is it? Let's wrap this big row into a padding, and let's actually say edge insets dot only from the right side. I want to give 10 pixels, and this should actually do the job. And there you go, I have a date text and also have the view button. Well, this is actually perfect. This actually also looks pretty simple and beautiful. Actually it looks really clear because actually it just looks really blank because the text button, this is actually really small. I did this because, as I said, the data provider is going to give us with long titles. So I'm going to just take this title and paste it over here so that you can see the whole app perfectly. And you can see now why I gave less font size. You will see how big the text will be. This is actually for the all news. The text is actually really big. Which error do I have now? Undefined name style. Okay, this should actually do the job. Sorry for that. There you go. As you saw, see, this is so big. That's why I used this less font size. So let's actually wrap this column into a padding because I want to have again some spacing from the top. So I'll say wrap with padding, and edge insets dot only from the top. I'll say 10 pixels. Now I should have some padding from the top. There you go. From the top I have 10 pixels of padding, and this actually now looks perfect and beautiful. So it actually pretty much finished with the UI. So after implementing the UI, let's actually implement the block and the rx start pattern for rendering out the whole data into our UI. So first of all, we have to get the data from the API and then re-render it back on our UI. So after rendering out the UI, let's actually work with our API. So let's actually check out our API, because I didn't explain so much about our news API. I just opened it up for seeing the categories. So this is the API, the news API.org. With this API, of course, we can just lots of things. First of all, we can just get everything. We can get top headlines, we can get the sources, we can just authenticate, and make sure you have to have an account. So yeah, you just have to have an account. You can easily register yourself and you'll get an API key, and with that API key you can just authenticate yourself. So you can only access the API with having that API key. So let's actually check out the endpoint. So we're gonna work with the top headlines endpoint. With this endpoint, we can get the top headlines for the country, or also depending on the category. Of course, we can also implement a drop down here. So we're going to implement a drop down here, which is going to actually enable us to select the country codes. And let me just go back to my website. Okay, and here we'll get a JSON data. So if we hit the whole endpoint, we'll get the JSON data with the articles list, and there we have an author, a title, a description. So we're going to read the description out with the DTS package. We're going to get the URL so the user can actually read the whole news in a separate website. We're going to get the URL to image. So of course, we're also going to get the image for this particular news, which we're going to render out at the left side of our UI. Then we're going to get the published ad. So when it was published, then the whole content. But the problem with whole content is actually this is premium. So to get the whole news, you should actually have a premium account. So this is the pricing. You can just check out the pricing if you want. So for example, if you're just doing a production app, you can just buy this API for, I don't know, let's actually check out the API pricing. So there you go, we have business, enterprise. So it just depends on whatever you're doing. So we're now actually just doing for educational purposes. That's why we're gonna just go with the free API. So yeah, that's it actually for the API. Let's go and implement our block pattern. So nevertheless, we actually only work with set state, but we never actually work with streams. So we're gonna actually implement our state management with streams. We're gonna have a stream controller which is gonna control the whole data, and then we're gonna render it out in a stream builder. So for actually starting out, let's actually create our models for the whole widgets. So let's actually create a folder, and I think why did I name screens like this? Let's actually just say screens. Okay, perfect. Let me just import it correctly. Okay, perfect. Let's actually create a new folder named models, where I have all my models. So in the models folder, I create a new file named news model dot. I'm going to actually create a class of a news model. So I'm doing this because I want to have a clean structure of my code. I don't want the data to be rendered it out, for example, on the main screen, then I'm going to get data and so on. So I want the clean structure. So to implement this pattern, we actually have a models folder. We're going to have a repository folder where we're going to get the data, and we're going to actually have a block folder where we're going to have our block pattern with the stream controller, and at last we have a UI. So we divided everything into 4 sections. One is the section with the model, other section is the repository where we'll get the data, and the other section is the state manager, so we'll have our stream controllers, and the new screen is actually our UI. So in the news model, let's actually implement the parameters, and when we go to the website, we will see lots of parameters. We're gonna get the author, title, description, URL to image, published ad, and content. So let's create some parameters. I'm gonna say final string author, then final string title, final string description, final string image, so the image. Then also we have final string the date. We also have the URL where we can navigate to, so final string URL. Then I'm gonna just initialize this because these are finals, so I'm gonna say this dot author, this dot title, this dot description, this dot image, this dot date, this dot URL, and I'm gonna just close this. And in the news model, I'm going to say news model.json. So I'm going to parse everything when I get the JSON data. So news model from JSON, and the JSON is going to be a map string. So the key is going to be a string, and the value is going to be a dynamic value because I don't know which type it is. And this is going to be a JSON variable. And now we can just parse the JSON. So we get the JSON data as a map with the list, but we have an author, title, and description. Now we can use these parameters. So the author is equal to this author variable parameter is going to equals to the JSON, whichever we get the JSON, and then we can access it like a key value pair because this is actually a map, and JSON, as you'll see here, this is just author. So I can just say author, comma, then we also have the title. So title is JSON title because in the news API, it's also called title. To make sure the JSON data key is actually the same as in the news API website. And we have the title, and after the title we also have the description. JSON, it was also description. We then also have a image. So image, this time it is actually different. We can't say JSON image because actually this is JSON then URL to image. So this key, and then after the image we also have the date, and the date was published at. So I'll say published at, and then I also have the URL, and this is actually just JSON then URL. So did I actually implement everything? Yes. I can just close this out now, and now I have news model from JSON where I actually parse the JSON data which I get. Now let's create a new model named news response where I get the response as a list because this is only for individual news. And then we're going to create a separate model where we'll have the list of news. I'm going to say class news response, and then as parameters I'm going to say final list, and this list is actually a type of a news model. So news model, and I'm going to just call it news. And then I also have an error. So for example, if I have an error, then I just pass it as an error. So I'll say final string error, and I can just initialize this. So I'll say news response this dot news this dot error. I just close this, and now what I can do is I can again just parse the JSON data. So I'll say news response dot from JSON, and again this JSON is a map string dynamic. So I can just pretty much copy this line and then double points, and what I'm going to do now is, so this news is equal to a list of news models, right? So as you will see in the data, we have the articles, but see, okay, this is a JSON data. So we have a status, we have total results, and we also have the articles, right? So to implement this, we actually have to go to the articles, and then in the articles we have a list of news, right? So we have to here say JSON articles. So here I have to say JSON and then articles, go to the articles key, and I'll just provide this as a list. So this is actually a list. So as list, I'm going to convert it to a list, and then I'm going to map the whole list because I'm going to iterate through the whole list and create a separate news model. And again, when I say dot to map, I of course have to call a dot to list. This is actually compulsory because this is an iterable, and this E is actually going to give us the data. So this is going to give us the whole data. Now from the E, so from the data, we're going to say news model dot from JSON. So we're going to parse the whole JSON, and JSON I have to provide this is the E variable. So this JSON is actually the articles key, and this E is in the articles. We'll just provide the whole JSON. So for example, the JSON data will be this data except the articles list, like this is the whole JSON data. And then I'm going to parse each individual news into news model from JSON. Then I'll have here a list of news. So this is how we do it, but this is how we parse a list of news. This is just a separate news model, but now we have a list of news models. And I can just easily use this in my UI. And other thing, we have error, we don't have error, it's a small warning. We also have to implement the error, right? So error variable, so error is equal to nothing, because when we have the data, then we won't have any error, right? But it's another case, so another case where we have error. So I'll say news response dot show error. Here we will have an error, and again this is a map string dynamic JSON. No, wait, this is not a map string JSON because it's an error, right? So we're actually going to get the error value. So I'll say string error value. And yeah, when we have an error, then our news variable will be an empty list because we won't have any data. That means we have an error, and then the error is equal to whichever error value we get. So I can just error is equal to error value. I'm going to close everything, and this should actually do the job. I think I have a warning. Okay, I have to close this here with a semicolon. Still I have a warning, don't know why. I had a comma here. Okay, this should be good. Yeah, everything is perfect now. Now we have created the two models. Now let's actually go and implement the repository. We will get the actual data from the API. So after implementing the models, let's actually implement the repository in our pattern, and then we'll implement the block pattern, and then we'll implement the streams. So what is a repository? So a repository is actually pretty much a data provider where we get the data from the API. We have a model layer, then we have a repository layer where we'll get the data. So to parse the whole models, we actually need some data, right? So let's actually get some data, and in the lib folder, I'm going to create a separate folder named repository. There I create a new file named news repository. So it's a news repository dot, and I'm going to create a class named news repository, and this is going to actually give me a news response, right? So I'm going to create a new function named get news. So I'll say get news, and in this function we're going to get the actual news, and this get news function actually takes in two parameters. One is the category, so which category it should parse for the news, and also the country. And this get news function is actually an async function because it could take some time to get the data, right? So I'm going to just wrap it in an async function. And let's actually implement the URL. So the URL is equal to, let's go to news API, and let me just create a new URL. So this is the URL, and please don't use this API key. I'm going to change this API key because you should actually use your own API key. So in the string URL variable, I'm going to just paste this variable, and API key, I'll just say, yeah, this is my API key, but please just don't use this API key because I'm going to just change this API key. And the country is going to be whichever country I provide here as a parameter. So instead of saying US, I'm going to say a string interpolation as a dollar symbol, and I'm going to just say country, and then I'm going to say and let's see, and categories. Okay, and category is equal to, again, to a string interpolation because I'm going to implement a variable in a string. So that's why I'm doing this dollar symbol string interpolation. So okay, country is equal to country, and the category is going to be whichever category I provided here as a variable. Let me just delete this variable. Okay, we have the API key of the category, we have the country, so this is the URL. Now let's actually parse this URL into URI because for the http.get method we need it in a URI. So I'm going to say URI, and I'm going to say URI.parse URL, and then for the URI I'm going to actually do a get request. Now after creating the URI variable, let's actually import a HTTP package so that we can make a request to the API. So I'm going to say import http dot as http, and now I'm going to create a response variable, and we can actually have an error, right? So we're going to actually wrap it in a try catch block, because of course I could have any error making the request in the try catch. So in the try block, I'm going to implement what I want to try. So I want to try to get the data, and this is going to be a type of response. So I'll say response, http.response variable. Then again, as I said, it could take some time to get the data, so I'm going to await it. So I'm going to say await http.getRequest, and as I said, the get request, like the get function, actually takes in a URI variable. That's why I parsed it into an URI. So I'm going to say URI. So after getting the data, let's actually parse it into a news response. So here I'm going to return news response dot from JSON, and I have to provide the JSON. So this response is going to give us a response.body, but we actually have to convert it back to a JSON. So that's why I'm going to use a JSON decode functionality. So JSON decode. So I'm going to just decode the whole response.body. So what is this response.body? This response.body is pretty much just this whole data. So this whole data with the articles variable and so on. That's why I implemented the news response. And this from JSON function it just handles everything with the list and so on. It's going to just create a list of news models. And let's actually go back to our repository, because I have to implement some more stuff here. So here, when I have an error, let's actually print error fetching news, and let's return news response. Let's return news response dot show error. So it's going to just handle the error functionality. It's going to, in the show error function, we are of course just said news is going to be an empty list, and the error is just the error value. So the error value is going to be just this e variable here. So show error e, I'm going to just pass in the e, and they should do the job for a repository. So in this way, we're going to actually just get the data from the API, and now we have to create another folder named Bloc, where we'll have our state manager, so where we'll have our stream controllers and so on, and we'll actually implement the stream. So after implementing the repository, let's actually create our state manager. So let's create a new folder named Bloc in the lib folder. I'm going to create a new folder named Bloc, where I'll have my Bloc files. So the first block is going to be just get news block. So I'll say get news block dot. I'm going to create a class named get news block. And in the get news block, let's actually create a stream controller. So before implementing the block, let's actually talk about stream. So what is a stream? So a stream is actually just continuous flow of data, and to actually control the continuous flow of data, we need stream controllers. So let's actually create a stream controller, and I'm going to create a final behavior subject. It's a type of news response, and this behavior subject actually comes in from the rx.dart file. Yeah, automatically imported it. Perfect. And this is going to be a subject, so I'm going to create a private subject, and this is equal to behavior. Let me just close this explorer so that you can see everything. This is equal to again a behavior subject. So this is how we create a stream controller with rx.dart. rx.dart is just reactive programming where we handle the state with streams, and this is again just type of news response. There are actually two types of subjects. There is a behavior subject and also a replay subject. Actually, people just use the behavior subject because this actually also caches the latest added value or error when a new listener subscribes to the stream. So the latest value will also be emitted to the listener. That's why people actually just use the behavior subject. Actually, we also have replay subject because I think I never used it in my life. I actually just use behavior subject. This is actually how we create a stream controller with rx.dart. And I have to actually just wait. I have an error. It can't recognize this. Let me say news response. Let me just import this file. Okay, there you go. Perfect. again I'm going to create a new response, and we have a slight warning that we have to close this, but we'll actually do it in a moment. Let me just actually provide the data. So after creating a stream controller, so this is how we create a stream controller with rx dot, and actually we have to add some value to the stream controller, right? So I'm going to say get news. Again, it's going to take in a category, so string category and a string country. And to add some data to this stream controller, we have to actually get some data. So to get the data, we can actually call a repository, right? So I'm going to say news response is equal to, again, it could take some time to get the data, so I'm going to just mark it an async function. Let me create an instance of repository, so I'm going to say final news repository. News repository is news repository, and I can just say await news repository dot get news. So already we have a function in the news repository itself which is going to get the news, and we have to just provide the category and country. So category, we're going to actually get it from here and pass it over here. This is how we get the news response. So this is how we get the data. So this, we have a response. Now to add the news response to our subject is pretty much simple. We just have to say subject dot sync. So this is how a stream sync. So with the sync, we can actually just add some data to the stream controller. So I'm going to say subject dot sync dot add, and I can just add this data here, news response. Perfect. This is how we add the data. Now let's to close the stream controller. I'm going to create a new function named dispose, which is going to just dispose everything. So dispose is subject dot dispose. No, we have to say subject dot close. Yeah, subject dot close. This is how we just close the stream controller. So no further events can be added to this closed stream. And yeah, pretty much we have created the block. Now let's go to our UI and actually receive the data back. But before that, let me just create a getter here. And let me just, this is just a getter so that I can easily access it. So behavior subject news response get subject is equal to just the private subject variable here. So till now, pretty much what we did was we just actually created the layer. So we created the models, the repositories, and the block. Now what we can do is we have to go to the home screen and actually get the data. So whenever we get the data with the repository and add it to our streams, right? We have to go to a new screen and create a stream builder, which is going to actually render out the UI with the desired data. So after creating a stream controller and adding some data to our stream controller, let's actually create a stream builder where we can actually receive the whole data into a stream builder. Then we can show it on a UI. So let's actually implement it. I'm going to go to new screen. I'm going to wrap this list view builder into a stream builder because actually I have a stream right now. I have to receive the stream. So I'm going to wrap with stream builder. And this is going to be a type of news response. News response. Okay, and the stream is the block, like the get news block. So let me actually create that, and I'm going to initialize the block whenever I enter this app. So I'm going to initialize the init state function. Let me actually create an instance of it. So I'm going to say get news block is get news block, and let me just convert this into the stateful widget so that I have that init state function. So whenever I enter this app, then I'm going to initialize my get news block. So here I'm going to say get news block. It is equal to get news block. And then I'm going to actually get the news. So I'm going to just again use this and say get news. And I have to pass in the category and country. So the default category is of course just the general section, right? So I'm going to just say general, and the country is the default is again US. Again later on we'll create a drop down button here where we'll have the country codes, but actually these are just the default values. And yeah, this is how we just call the get news function. And this get news function is again going to call our news repository, and then we're going to get the data and add it to our stream controller. Now after adding it to our stream controller, let's go to our stream builder and actually receive the stream. So to receive the stream, we can just say get news block. So get news block dot subject. So this is the getter we created, dot subject dot stream to get the stream from the subject. So dot stream, and let's actually create a builder. So builder is snapshot, and if the snapshot doesn't have any data, so if it doesn't have any data, then we're going to show in the center a circular progress indicator. That means we need some time to get the data. So if snapshot what has data is false, that's why I'm using this mark. So I'm saying if it is not true, then in the center I'm going to show a circular progress indicator, which is going to indicate that yeah, it's going to take some time, just wait. So return center, and in the child I'm going to have a circular progress indicator, and here I'm going to return a list view builder. And now to get the data, I can just say list. So this like these news are a type of news model, so I'm going to say list news model news list, and this is actually just snapshot.data. Snapshot.data is going to provide us with the data from the stream controller, and now we have to just call .news to get the whole news list. So this is how we get the news list. And item count, so how many items we have depending on the list. So I'm going to just say news list dot length, and let's actually create some parameters to our news headline widget so that we can actually pass them and render them out here. So I'm going to just copy some values. I'm going to just copy this because I'm going to just change one thing. So up here I'm going to actually also here receive some parameters, and instead of initializing as news model, I'm going to just say news headline widget, and this should actually do the job. Perfect. So let's go to news screen and actually pass in those data. So here I'm going to just say news model news is equal to news list. So go to the news list, and actually depending on the index, get the desired news, because this index actually just going to provide us in which index we are in the list view builder. And here I can just say news.author. After that I can say news.title, news.description, news.image, news.date, news.url. Okay, perfect. Now there is a small thing we have to fix. So first of all, these data can actually also be null. So whenever we get it from the API, sometimes this data can also be null, so we have to actually check it. So I'm going to say if news.author, so if news.author is actually null, then just provide an empty string, because we won't want to actually provide a null because this won't accept it and we will get an error. So that's why I have to check it. That's the only thing I don't like about this API. So sometimes it's going to give some null values. If it doesn't have any data, it doesn't give an empty string. So I'll just check for everything. No, then show an empty string, or else just show a desired data here, news.image. If it is null, show an empty string, or else news.image. And if news.date is null, show an empty string, or else news.date. And for the URL, it's actually pretty much the same thing. If it is null, show an empty string and the news.url. Okay, perfect. So we're checking here for some null values, and let's go to news headline widget, and yeah, just render out those items there. And sometimes this image can also be like an empty string, right? We don't want to provide an empty string into a network image. So I'm going to here again check if image is an empty string, just show a blank container instead of showing that image. Okay, perfect. We checked for that. And instead of saying network image with this URL, whichever URL we get from our widget here, so I can just say image. I can just pass in the image here instead of just providing a random network image value. And here for the title, again I can just say title, and we also have the author. So I'm going to say author. And for formatting the date, it's actually also pretty much easy. So what we have to do is we actually in PubSec YAML we got a package named Intel, right? So now we can actually use that package Intel, because with that package we're going to format the date. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the date format from the Intel package. So date format .ymd .format, and we're going to get a date as a string, so we have to again convert it back to datetime. So datetime.parse whichever date we get. So this is how we format the date. So this ymd is going to just give us like kind of this, so it's going to give a year, a month, and a day. And then also here for the author, for example, if the author name is really big, for example if there are multiple authors, so sometimes a news can be written by 2 authors, so it's gonna be really big and we're gonna have a dex error, right? So that's why I'm gonna wrap this text into an expanded, so that automatically it's gonna regrow without showing any errors. So I'm gonna say expanded. This should do the job. And let's actually save everything and see if we get any data, and let's actually do a full restart before saving everything. Actually we should get some data, so we should see the title, the author, and the date, and the network images. Okay, so there you go. I have a circulate progress indicator. That means I'm getting some data, and yep, I got an error. So the error is saying format exception invalid date format. Okay, so it's actually providing an invalid date format. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just go to the new screen, and I won't check for the date. I'm gonna just provide the news.date. Let me just do a full reset now and see if I have anything. Again, we're gonna get a circular progress indicator, and after a while we're gonna get the whole data. Okay, invalid arguments input must be null. So let me just check. We have error. So if news author is null, then show an empty string. Okay, I'm checking for an empty string, but I don't know which error, like why I'm getting this error. So I think I got the error. See up here, it's saying invalid input must not be null. That means it's again indicating something with our date format. So it's saying datetime.parse. It's gonna, like, it can't parse the null value. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just do the same thing. So I'm gonna say empty string. Here also I'm gonna say empty string, but let me go to news headline widget, and here I'm gonna again check. So if it is null, so if it is an empty string, so if date is equal to an empty string, then just show the empty string and don't format it. So now let's actually check, and we should see something. Still we have an error. Let me just save everything maybe. Okay, let me save everything. I did a full restart. This time again it's gonna say circular prox indicator, and there you go guys. That means yes, perfect. So everything is working, but again there's a problem. So the problem is, no, we don't have any problem. So it's actually working well. See, we have the title, we have the author. I'm pretty sure this is the author. The problem is none of them has a date. That means there is something wrong with our model. So let's go to the model, news model. Okay, I know it. So I'm saying publish ad. It's actually published ad. It was a small typo from my side. Let me just save everything, and we should now get also the date for some values or for some widgets. Yeah, it was just a small typo in the model, so it couldn't parse the JSON. So because there was nothing with published, it was published. That there you go. We also have the date. That means the date is also working perfectly, and we also have some images. That means this is working perfectly. Now what I'm going to implement before I implement TTS, so text to speech, before I implement it, I want to actually provide some state for this here. So I want to provide a state for these categories here. Also, when I click on a category or a country code, I want to actually change the whole data. So let's actually implement it. So I'm getting the news, but I'm actually providing general and US at the beginning, but when I click on the buttons, nothing is happening. I actually want to change the news depending on the category. So let's actually implement some state for these categories. So again, I'm going to work with stream controllers because I don't want to use that state in this whole project. I'm going to create a new block. So I'm going to just name this maybe select category. Select category block. Dot. Let me create a class. So I'm going to say class select category block, and here I'm going to actually create a controller. So I'm going to create a stream controller without any behavior subject because I'm not getting any data or something. I just want to have a basic stream controller for controlling my whole categories header here. So I'm going to say final stream controller is going to be a category controller. And I'm going to use a stream controller.broadcast. So stream controller.broadcast. So there's a difference between the stream controllers. So what's the difference between a stream controller and a stream controller.broadcast? So the difference is pretty much easy. So the broadcast name itself is actually just self-explanatory. That means actually multiple persons can actually listen to this category controller or multiple widgets or something like that, because if I have a single stream controller, then only one person can hear to the stream. But when I have a stream controller broadcast, then multiple people can hear to the stream. That is why I'm using a stream controller broadcast. And I'm going to have a default category here. So I'm going to say string default category is go to the categories list and get the first value. This is just going to be default, or let's actually make it, yeah, we can actually just say categories in the first value. This is actually perfect. Now let's implement a function for selecting the category. So I'm going to say void select category. Whenever we want to select the category, we're going to actually just add the category to our stream controller. So I'm going to get the category here in the function, and here I'm going to just say category controller dot sync dot add to add an event to it. So I'm going to just add this category here. Perfect. Now let's actually close this controller somewhere. So I'm going to just run a dispose function, and here I can just close this. So category controller dot close. Perfect. Now let's actually also create a getter for this. So I'm going to say stream get category stream. I can just say category controller dot stream. Okay, so now let's actually implement this block somewhere else. So let's go to new screen and implement this block. Here I'm going to create a new instance for it. So I'm going to say select category block, and here I'm going to just assign it to a select category block. So select category block is equal to select category block. Okay, perfect. Now let's go to our single chart scroll view. Let's actually again wrap this into a stream builder, because again we're going to get the data as a stream. So we're going to handle the whole state for this header with the stream builder, because we're going to get the stream, and the stream is pretty much this: select category block dot category stream, which we created. So the getter, and let's also have initial data. So the initial data is going to just be the select category dot default category. This is just going to be a default category, and we're going to just get the whole categories here as a snapshot. So what I can do is I can check for the snapshot.data. So whenever the snapshot.data is actually equal to the category which is selected, that means we can just show a black color or else the gray color. So here for the colors one, I can say if snapshot.data is equal to the current category in the map function. So here if it is equal to the category, then show a black color, or else just show a gray color. Now when I just reset everything, the general text should actually be black because this was just our default value. So here in a stream builder, we'll have initial data. The initial data was the default category, and the default category was general. There you go. This is black. Now when I click on this should actually become black because I selected on this, right? But we didn't add any event to it. So let's actually wrap this into an inkwell so that I can actually have some on tap actions. So on tap, I'm gonna just say select category block dot select category. I can just pass in the category as a parameter here. Now as you will see, when I click on the science section, like in a science text field, when I click on a science text, now see automatically this becomes black because here in select category function, we're adding this science to our category controller, and here we're checking it. So the snapshot.data is actually whichever we added into a stream controller. It's checking if this is equal to the current category in the map function, then we're showing colors.black, or else we're just showing colors.gray. So this is actually pretty much working perfectly. Now we actually have to implement a drop down button here. So before actually implementing the API repository, so when I click on this, I should have new data. Before implementing that, let's actually also implement a drop down so that we can implement both at the same time. So after implementing some state for the header, so for this categories header, let's actually implement a drop down so that we can select a country code. For example, if we want some Indian news or Slovakian news or Germany news or German news, then we can select depending on a drop down. So let's actually create a drop down here. I'm going to go to the app bar, and in the app bar we can implement something on the right side of the app bar in the actions property. So I'm going to say actions, and you can actually provide multiple widgets because this is going to accept the list, but we'll actually have only one widget. We're going to have a drop down button, and the items are going to be a list of country codes. So I'm going to use this dot and create a list of country codes. So I'm going to just paste my country codes here. I'll just provide these country codes. If you want in the resources folder, you can just download it. So these country codes are pretty much actually the same stuff which I had here. Let me just go to the API. So these are all the country codes which I just wrapped everything in a list. So after creating the country codes list, let's take this and let's go to our new screen. So let's go to new screen, and for the items I can just say country codes dot map. So I'm going to just map the country codes, and again I have to just call dot to list whenever I call dot to map, and this is going to give us a code. So dot map is pretty much, it's going to just iterate through the country codes list and render out the widgets dynamically. Of course we don't want to write each drop down item individually, right, because there are lots and lots of country codes. That's why we're doing dynamically. Here we're going to return a drop down item, drop down menu item, and the child of this is going to be just a text widget. So text, it's going to take just this code because we're going to just map this country codes list, right? And let me just format everything perfectly. Okay, so we have everything formatted perfectly. We have the child text code. Let's actually also implement some styling. So the style of the text is going to be just a text style 20 pixels, and the color is going to be colors.black, font weight to W700. Let's also give a background color here. So I'm going to drop down color. I can call a drop down color property, and I'll just say colors.white. And the initial data, so what's the initial data? The initial data is going to just be, where is it? Initial, where is that property? Actually, I'm searching for that. Oh, I think the property name was, yeah, it was value, not initial data. I forgot it. So it was the value. So the current value, we actually have to, for example, for now I'll just say US, but later on we'll implement a stream builder for that. I'm going to save everything, and we should see a drop down here. Okay, I have error. Okay, the error is saying there should be exactly one item with drop down buttons value US, either 0 or 2 or more, but detected with the same value. Okay, so the problem is, let's go to country codes and let's actually search if we have actually a US property or not. I think the problem is we don't have, oh, we have a US, but what's the problem for it then? So I think the problem is, let's go to new screen, and we didn't provide any value for the drop down menu item. Okay, yeah. So actually here we also have to provide a value. So value is going to be just this code again. Now when I save everything, I should this time have a drop down button. There you go, US. So I have a drop down button. Now when I click on this, I'll have multiple country codes to select, but I can't click on this because I didn't implement on changed and so on. So let's actually do that. So let's actually provide some icon size. So the icon size is going to be 22 pixels and on change. So whenever we click on a button or when we click on a property for the, whenever we click on a country code, we're going to get the country code. Let me just print the country code for now, but later on we'll implement it with a stream controller. I'm going to just print the current value, icon size, not icon. So icon size. Let's save everything, and when I click on this drop down button, I should actually see a list of multiple drop downs. When I click on this, there you go, I have multiple country codes to select from. I can just select from these country codes, and yeah, when I click on the country codes, I actually have to see some new news and also have to change the value from here, right? So let's actually implement some state for this. Again, let's go to get select category block. So I'm gonna just rename this into select category block. Okay, I'll just leave it to select category block because I don't want to create a new class for this. This is just waste of code because I can actually write this over here. So I'll just say final stream controller. I'll just, you know what, we can just copy, right? So we can just copy these both values and paste it over here, and here I'm going to just say country controller and country stream, and the stream is going to be country controller dot stream. I'm going to have a default country again, so string default country is going to be US, so this is going to be default. And let's actually create a function named select country. As a parameter, we'll accept a code, so I'm going to string code, and I'm going to just add the event to my country controller. So country controller dot sync dot add the event. So event is going to be just this code string, and let's actually also close this controller, right? So I say country controller dot close to close the whole country controller. And when I save everything, I have, so before saving everything, let's actually implement this stream controller into a stream builder in our drop down button. So let's go to new screen, and okay, let's wrap this drop down button into a stream builder. The stream is pretty much simple. The stream is just go to the select category block. So select category block dot, where is it? It is the country stream. Okay, perfect. So we have the country stream also. And now to actually give the initial data, so the initial data is gonna be select category block dot default country, and here for the value I can just say snapshot.data, whichever data we get. So snapshot.data to get the data from the stream controller, and here for child text is code. Okay, this is okay. Let's actually say on change. So whenever we press on the country code, I actually want to add the event. So I want to add the country code to my select category block. So select category block dot select country, I'm going to call it select country function, and I'm going to just add this value here. Let's save everything now and see if our drop down button also works, because now we wrapped everything into a stream builder, and this time this should actually work perfectly. So when I click on the drop down button and when I click on TR, there you go, the value has been automatically changed because we're adding the TR to our controller, and here we can get the controller back because we have a continuous flow of data again. So when I click on this one, see, this changes automatically. So it means the drop down button is working perfectly. Now the last thing, or one of the things we have to implement is whenever I click on the categories or a drop down item, I want to actually change the news. For example, if I click on science, I want to have science news. I want to change the state of the whole news, right? So let's actually implement that. So after adding the state for a drop down button and also for the categories, let's actually get the data depending on the category or the country code. So for example, when I click on science, I want to have science news. So let's go to categories here. When I click on this, so I'm selecting a category. What I'm going to do is automatically here, I can just say get news block. So get news block dot get news, and I can just pass in the category. So category is snapshot.data pretty much. So snapshot.data. And the only problem is how to get the country now. So the country code is actually in the category in the country stream, and the problem is how to get the country value now. So as I said, I don't want to use set state. I could actually implement it easily with set state and so on. So here I could just create a variable named country code, and for the drop down button without any stream builders, I can of course just say set state and set the value for it. I can just access the value from here. But as I said, I don't want to use set state in this whole project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create two stream builders. So it's actually possible in Flutter that you can have nested stream builders. So I'm going to have a nested stream builder. So what I'm going to do is I will wrap this whole single child scroll view into a new stream builder, and the stream this time is going to be select category block dot country stream, and the initial data for this is going to be select category block dot default country. Now to get the country is pretty much easy. We can just here let's actually create new snapshot. So here I'll say country snapshot, because I don't want to get confused between the normal snapshot and for the country snapshot. And for the country, I can just say country snapshot dot data. So this is how we do it. We can have nested stream builders, and I can just call the get news block. I can just call a get news function here, and it's going to add the news rest. So it's going to hit the API, it's going to get the data, and it's going to just add it to a stream controller for the news response, and then we're going to have some new data. So I think I have error because I have some red values here. Okay, I have to close this. Let me save everything, and this time this should work. So when I click on sports, I should have sports news with US country selected because I selected US now. So let me just open debug console to check for some errors or something like that. So now when I click on sports, I should have sports news. There you go, I have sports news. That means this is working perfectly. Now, for example, if I click on technology, I'll have technology news. Okay, so I have technology news, but this is actually not technology. Isn't this actually sports? When I click on science, okay, the problem is when I click on science and so on, let's actually do a full restart. I think we should actually just do a full restart, because we wrote some new stream builders and so on. I think it's getting confused between those. Okay, let me just click on the sports, and we should have sports news. No, we don't have any sports news. When I click on technology, then I have sports news. Okay, as you see, okay, I know. Okay. So when I click on science, then I have technology news. Okay, the problem is I can't say snapshot the data because it's the old value. So okay, sorry for that. I actually have to say category, so whichever category I selected on. Just a really dumb mistake from me. I just forgot it because the snapshot of the data is actually pretty much the old data, so that is why it's not recognizing the new category. Now let's actually implement this. So when I click on sports this time, I should have sports news. Okay, let me just click on sports, and there you go, I have sports news. Okay, when I click on science, I will have science news, and when I click on technology, I will have technology news. Okay, that means this is working perfectly. So the other thing we have to implement is also the same thing for the country codes. Also, when I click on a country code, I have to have some new data depending on the country and the category. So let's again wrap this drop down button into a stream builder, and I can just copy the stream from here. And here snapshot, I'll just say category snapshot. And whenever we click on this, so select country. So yeah, okay, select the country, but also call the get news. So I say get news block, get news, and let's pass in the category. So category is just category snapshot data, and the country is whichever country we selected on, so just value. Okay, so now let's save everything, and we should also see some new news depending on the country. So for now, this is actually just US. Now when I just open a drop down and select, for example, India or something like that, so let me just select India. Let me just select on India, and we should have technology news for India. So this is actually technology news for India. Okay, isn't this actually isn't this health news? Okay, again we have some problems. Isn't it actually health news? So I think this is not technology, right? This is kind of like general news and not technology news. So do we have any errors? So let's actually do a restart and see if we have some kind of error warning or a small typo. I'm pretty sure I have a small typo or something like that. Okay, there you go, general news for US. So this is general news for US. Now when I click on science, I'll have science news for US. Okay, this is science news for US. Okay, perfect. Now get me some science news, for example, for India. Click on science, there you go. Yeah, this is actually science, so there you go, I have science news. And when I click on sports, I'll have sports news. Okay, that means I just had to do a small full restart. That means now everything is working. So here I have general news. Okay, perfect. Let me click on technology, and I should have technology news. Okay, let's actually click on IT. I think it's Italian news. Okay, there you go, so technology news for Italy. And yeah, that's it for the drop downs and for the category selection. We're actually pretty much almost finished. We just have to implement TTS, so text to speech, and also functionality for this view button, and then we're actually finished. So after getting the news depending on the category and also the country code, let's actually implement TTS, so text to speech. When I click on the play button, I should actually play the whole description. So it should automatically read out the whole description, and then if the user likes it, he can click on the view button and he can just view the whole news. So let's go to news headline widget, and let's create a new function named speak, but we actually have to have an instance of Flutter TTS. So here I'm going to create Flutter TTS instance. So Flutter TTS is going to be Flutter TTS, and I'm going to create a separate function named speak, and this speak function is actually going to take in a string text. And to actually use TTS, it could take some time to initialize TTS, so I'm going to just wrap this into an async function. For example, if you want to see all the languages, you can just print the languages. So you can just say print await TTS dot get languages to get all the languages available. I'll just say TTS, not for TTS, it's just a small line of code. So I say await TTS dot get languages to get all the languages, and I'm gonna just set the default language. So await tts.select language, or set language, not select language, set language. And the language I will just say EN, so English, and I'll just have the US accent. Of course, you can just check out the whole languages. When you just print this, it will just show you all the languages available. And let's actually also set the pitch. So I'll say await tts dot set pitch. So what I'm doing, I'm just doing some pre-configuration stuff before I actually speak out the whole text. So I'm gonna again also set the volume, await set volume, tts dot, not set voice, it's actually set volume. Okay, again I'm gonna have max, so 1 is actually just max. And now let's actually speak out the whole text. So I'll say await tts.speak, and yeah, just speak out the text which I get in as a parameter here. Let's actually, I'll just have some volume up so that you guys can hear it. And here when I click on the play button, so let's wrap this into an inkwell so that we can handle some on tap actions. So I'll say on tap, just call the speak function. So I'll say speak, and which I want to speak the description, right? So I'm going to just pass in the description as a variable here. And let me just save everything. I hope you guys can hear it because I'm currently talking on a mic. I'm not sure if it can catch also the computer's audio. So now when I click on the play button, I will,
Expansion of
there you go, there you go, it's reading the whole text. I hope you guys can hear it. See, there you go, it actually read the whole description for me. And let's say the user wants to stop reading, I can just wrap this. I can also enter an inkwell, and I can implement functionality for the stop button also. So for the stop button, I'm going to say on tap. So whenever the user taps on this button, I of course want to stop everything, right? So I can just say tts.stop to just stop the whole tts so that it just stops reading it out. So okay, when I just read this, and when I click on the stop button, there you go, when I click on the stop button, everything just stopped, right? So the TTS is also working, and as you saw, it was really easy, right? We just had to create a function named speak, and we just had to set the language, the pitch, the volume, and we can just, and then at last we could just use tts.speak, and we had to just pass in with what text to speech. So after implementing this, let's actually do the last thing. Let's actually implement the view button functionality. So when a user clicks on this, I should have a web view, and I can just view the whole views there. So for web view, I'm going to create a new screen. So in the screens folder, I'm going to create a new file named view new screen. I'm going to import Flutter here. I'm going to create a stateless widget because I won't have any set state or something like that. So I'm going to again say view news screen. Let's actually take in a parameter. So here final string URL. I'm going to initialize this because it's final. So view new screen this dot URL. And here return, instead of returning a container, I'm going to say view web, which I got from the WebView Flutter package. So view web, or I think it was WebView Flutter or something like that. I'm just checking it out. So WebView, yeah, okay, there you go, WebView. And the initial URL, so initial URL is just the URL which we get in the widget. So I'm gonna just say initial URL is URL, and this is actually it. So as you said, it was also really easy. We just had to create a web view and pass in the initial URL, and I can just call it view new, and I can just call this view new screen wherever I want. So when I click on this view button, right, so let's go to new headline widget, and let's go to the view button. So on press, when I click on this, I'm going to use a navigator to navigate to the screen. So navigator dot push context, and the root is going to be material page root. The builder is going to take in a context, and we're going to return a view new screen, and I'm going to just pass in the URL. So URL, I can just say URL, let's import this view new screen. Let me save everything. Now when I click on this, I should actually see the whole news. So when I click on this view button, I should be navigated to an web view where I'll be able to see the whole news. There you go. Here I can just read the whole news in a detailed way, because as I said, this API is gonna only give a limited amount of content. So when we go to the API, as you see, top headlines, Flutter. Let me just do a full restart. There you go. For the content, here in the content is gonna just stop here. It's gonna say plus 4,940 characters, but it's gonna just give this amount of content, because other content we actually have to pay. That's why I implemented a web view. When the user wants to have more information about this, you can click on the view button. Then we're gonna take him to the view new screen where we'll have a web view, and we just pass an initial URL, the URL. So yeah, okay, that's it guys for this whole project. I hope you enjoyed it and also learned some stuff. So let's do a full review, or let's do a quick recap. We created some controllers. So first of all, we created controllers for controlling the whole stream. So a stream is again a continuous flow of data. Then we actually requested some data from the API. So we got the data in a JSON format. We decoded it with models. So we created two models, news and news response. And then we added to our stream controller, and we took this stream controllers and rendered it out in our new screen. So we took this stream controllers and implemented them into a stream builder, because then we can actually get the data out from the stream controller, and then we showed it in our UI. And TTS was also really easy. We just had to say TTS dot, we just had to pre-configure TTS, and then we could just use TTS.speak. So that's it for this whole section, and let's actually move on to the next section.